Bogdanovich seemed to be an average working mother.
She was very attentive and very caring.
But behind her wholesome facade was a secret sexual desire.
She spent the vast majority of her time online looking for sex fantasies.
And she found just what she was looking for in an adventurous college student named Michael McGregor.
He's looking for someone with more experience, someone who can show him the ropes.
Together, the couple unleashed their passions and explored their kinkiest fantasies. But their insatiable lust would lead to a dark obsession and end with an unspeakable crime.
She's covered in blood, and she's hysterical, she's crying.
Now, go behind the scenes with those who knew the lovers and learn what caused this gruesome atrocity and unravel a twisted tale of sex, bondage, and passion gone horribly awry.
A real scary picture started to unfold.
January 1st, 2013, Ontario, Canada. While locals in the sleepy town of Sarnia had been up most of the night celebrating the new year, one concerned resident was calling local police. Lynn Paquette told officers that her daughter Noelle had gone out to a party the night before. They were supposed to see each other that day, but Noelle had never shown up and wasn't answering her phone.
Noelle was really close to her parents, particularly her mom, and would speak to her 4 or 5 times a day. And she was a big texter. So radio silence, it was unusual.
Noelle's mother told police that she'd spoken to some of her daughter's friends, who were the last ones to see her. They said Noelle had left the party after an incident with her boyfriend.
They get into a lover's spat, more than likely fueled by alcohol, and she decides, I'm leaving.
Noelle told her friend, I'm going home and I'm gonna walk there.
It was the last time anyone had spoken to her. The question now for police was what happened to Noelle Paquette after she walked alone into the night? And where was she now? The answers to those questions would ultimately lead to the unmasking of 2 desperate killers, whose obsessions pushed them to do the unthinkable. At the southern tip of Lake Huron lies the peaceful town of Sarnia, Ontario. It was also home to young Tanya Bogdanovich. Raised by a single mother, Tanya grew up into a confident, if slightly self-possessed, teenager.
She was very fun and outgoing. She didn't want to fit into any mold that anybody had, so she was pretty much herself.
But Tanya's strong will didn't set well with everyone. Tanya's parents had divorced when she was a child, and her mother eventually remarried. And Tanya's rebellious attitude as a teenager led to constant conflict with her stepfather. Tensions in the family quickly escalated out of control, to the point where 15-year-old Tanya was sent to stay at a nearby group home with other girls who were wards of the state. At first, Tanya enjoyed life away from her stepfather's discipline. But she would quickly discover her new living situation was a nightmare by comparison.
She was living with some troubled girls, and they saw her as easy prey.
Tanya was very new to the group home, and she felt like she could not fight back. She was sexually, physically, and emotionally abused.
Tanya begged her mother to let her come home, only to be turned away.
Her mother ignored it. Nothing was done. And I think that set the groundwork for a life of a lot of mistrust.
When she turned 18, Tanya was able to move out of the group home. No longer a ward of the state, Tanya was free to take control of her own life. She met a local man and got married. By her early 20s, she was the happy mother of 2 children. But once again, Tanya's trust would be betrayed.
Tanya's husband just walked out on her and her kids.
Left to raise 2 children on her own, Tanya took whatever work she could find. And after just a few years, she managed to save enough money to start a new life and a new career in nursing school.
I met Tanya originally when I was going to college. She was very attentive and very caring, and nursing was definitely something that she wanted to do for the rest of her life.
After graduation, Tanya found work as a nurse in a senior center and started dating a new man. Soon, they'd move in together. He was kind and supportive, helping Tanya raise her children.
She just wanted to be able to move forward with her life and give her kids stability and a good life.
But as much as Tanya appreciated her live-in boyfriend, their sex life left her deeply unsatisfied.
He's a traditional guy, which makes him really attractive to Tanya as a potential husband, but their sex life, it's boring.
Tanya craved a more passionate and adventurous sex life, so she went online and found a social media site that catered to people looking to explore their kinkiest sexual desires.
By day, she was the mother. She had a committed partner, and she worked as a nurse, but she spent the vast majority of her time online looking for sex fantasies, looking to share them, looking to find a partner.
And it was online that Tanya would ultimately meet the sexually adventurous partner she was looking for. An 18-year-old college student named Michael McGregor. Like Tanya, Michael had been raised in southeastern Ontario. Growing up, he didn't have many friends, preferring to spend most of his time on his computer. And when teenage hormones began to kick in, Michael's online activity found a new focus: pornography.
He starts out with regular porn sites, but the more he watches, the more he gravitates towards the kinkier stuff.
When he left home for college at 18, Michael longed to find someone who shared his desires. But the awkward freshman lacked the confidence to meet girls, let alone one who might be willing to indulge his sexual fantasies in real life.
He has thoughts he can't share with anybody. He has a big hole inside him because he feels so isolated.
So Michael turned to the one place where he felt he could be himself: the internet, creating a profile on a website that catered to alternative sex.
On his profile, he says he's looking for someone with more experience.
Michael is sort of reaching out saying, oh, I'd like to explore this fetish lifestyle, I'm willing to try anything.
So when sexy, older Tanya Bogdanovich sent him a private message, Michael couldn't believe his luck. Tanya was exactly the kind of woman Michael had been hoping to meet, and she seemed eager to take him under her wing.
All of a sudden you have someone saying, hey, you're an outsider, I'm an outsider too, but don't worry, I can show you the ropes.
The two flirted online for several weeks, sharing their darkest fantasies. And they discovered that they both shared one particular fantasy that was both unusual and taboo.
One of their main fetishes was this idea of rape play. And rape play is two consenting individuals. One is the aggressor, and one is the quote-unquote rape victim.
So one night in June, when Tanya's boyfriend and children were away, she and Michael decided to make their fantasy a reality. Michael drove to Tanya's house, where she answered the door ready and willing to be his submissive victim.
Their first date, or physical meeting, I suppose is the best way to put it, was a rape.
It was a life-changing experience for both of them, and they connected in ways neither had ever felt before in their lives.
When they connected fast and hard, and the relationship developed very quickly.
Over the next few months, the lovers continued to meet, fulfilling new fantasies. And the more they shared, the more intense their bond became.
The intimacy that developed between Tanya and Michael was of this sex, this aggressive, extreme, violent sex.
It was the first safe space they ever experienced. They found a partner who was willing to accept them exactly the way they are.
Though with a boyfriend and kids at home, Tanya had intended to keep romance out of her sexual hobbies. But as the affair stretched on for several months, she couldn't deny that her relationship with Michael had evolved beyond just sex.
They were spending more time together, going out places, whether it was the beach or going out for lunch or whatever. And that's what sort of stemmed her to admit that it was an actual relationship.
Tanya was faced with an impossible choice between the stable, supportive family she'd always longed for and an exciting young lover who understood her in a way no one else ever could. Little did anyone then know that her decision would have deadly consequences and unleash an unspeakable evil that the town of Sarnia had never seen. Coming up, the disappearance of a local school teacher stuns a community.
This town was determined to find her.
And the search takes a dark turn when clues suggest a pair of local lovers might have something to do with the missing woman.
If this car with 2 people in it right around the same time frame as Miss Paquette's disappearance, one would have to think there's highly likely a connection.
Tanya Bogdanovich was a 30-year-old mother living a double life. By day, she was a caring nurse, but by night, she pursued a secret obsession with bondage and domination. Tanya had created a profile on a fetish website, looking for someone to fulfill her deepest fantasies. That's where she met 18-year-old college student Michael McGregor.
When this young man stepped forward and said, you know, you could probably talk me into doing anything, she jumped for it.
Although Tanya had young children and a stable boyfriend, their sex life had left her craving more. And the intense sexual bond she shared with Michael proved impossible to resist.
What started out as this fantasy BDSM sexual encounter grew into a love affair.
But while the lovers were exploring their darkest sexual urges, their peaceful town of Sarnia, Ontario, was about to be thrown into chaos. On New Year's Day, Sarnia police responded to reports of a missing person. 27-year-old Catholic schoolteacher Noelle Paquette vanished after leaving a party the night before.
Her cell phone's not working. Nobody's seen her. Nobody knows where she is.
Since it had been less than 24 hours, police were hopeful Noelle would turn up on her own. But by the next day, she was still missing, and detectives officially opened an investigation. Noelle's friends told police that she'd stormed out of the party after a drunken fight with her boyfriend. So detectives couldn't help but wonder if he had something to do with her disappearance.
Maybe the fight didn't end at the party. Maybe he followed her, and then things just got out of hand.
When officers tracked down Noelle's boyfriend, he admitted that he and Noelle had gotten into an argument at the party. But he said he knew better than to follow Noelle when she was angry. And witnesses confirmed that he didn't leave until much later. He also showed detectives a series of text messages he'd exchanged with Noelle on her way home, trying to apologize.
They text back and forth a few times, and then she stops replying.
Her cell phone started going unanswered at 2:45 a.m., and it was just radio silent.
Detectives knew she'd never made it home. So what happened to Noelle at 2:45? Searching for answers, police reviewed video recordings from traffic and security feeds along Noelle's route. And just as they'd hoped, she popped up on a series of closed-circuit cameras.
They were able to see her walking along the streets. They were able to get a very good timeline of when she left and the last time that she was seen.
Camera footage along the street Noelle had been taking showed her headed toward a bus station around 2:45 a.m., the time when she suddenly stopped answering her phone. The cameras at the station should have picked up Noelle a few minutes later, but when police looked at the tapes, they discovered that she never got there.
She just vanished into thin air.
With no other clues to follow, police went public with the news of Noelle's disappearance, hoping someone might have seen her in the area that night. Within hours, the residents of Sarnia had mobilized to help find the school teacher.
She taught kindergarten at a Catholic school. She volunteered with children. She was beloved and not the sort of person who would get drunk and just wander away, which made people alarmed, very alarmed.
The community gets into action. They set up search parties, they start looking.
I'd say that probably everyone in Sarnia was trying their best to find her.
But 24 hours after the news went public, even the community's extensive search efforts had failed to turn up any sign of Noelle Paquette. Police were feeling pressure from both her family and townspeople to find answers. But they had no idea where to start. Until they received some unexpected help. On January 2nd, a highway patrolman was monitoring traffic outside of town when a startled motorist pulled up to tell him about a disturbing discovery he'd made just up the road.
This gentleman's driving down the road on his way to work, and he stops to brush off his truck, and as he's doing so, he sees some blood drops on the side of the road.
But when the officer drove back to the location to check it out, he found more than just a few drops of blood.
He also sees footprints leading into the forested area just off to the side of the road.
He decides, well, I'm going to investigate it a bit further.
The footprints led the officer deep into the woods before the trail abruptly ended. But just as he was about to return to his patrol car, he saw something lying in the grass.
The officer discovers a young, petite, white female, fully clothed, face down.
He can't see her face, but he can see her blonde hair, and he sees a large amount of blood.
He comes away with the very easy conclusion that she's deceased.
The officer called for backup. And when investigators turned the body over to identify the victim, everyone's worst fears were confirmed.
The dead woman was Noelle Paquette.
What they realized immediately is that the young woman had been brutally assaulted.
She had a number of stab wounds that were quite evident. And the most disturbing would be the incisions to her throat.
Her throat had been cut from ear to ear.
When the townspeople found out that Noelle had been murdered, the pressure on detectives to find out what happened to her became even more intense.
There was no explanation yet, so everybody was essentially scared and traumatized by this, trying to figure out who would have done this.
Meanwhile, Tanya Bogdanovich and Michael McGregor were still in the midst of their kinky affair. But while the lovers were pushing their boundaries in the bedroom, Sarnia police detectives were trying to figure out who killed Noelle Paquette. And the savage nature of the attack told them that this had not been a random act of violence.
You don't just stab someone that many times and cut their throat unless you have some really strong emotions, and whoever did this had a lot of aggression.
Investigators couldn't help but wonder, what kind of monster would slaughter a young woman like Noelle Paquette and leave her body in the woods?
Noelle was universally loved by people in the community. She volunteered with children. Here she was, the victim of a strange and brutal crime. Who would ever want to hurt Noelle Paquette?
Coming up, police learn about a harrowing incident that occurred the same night that Noelle disappeared.
A female exits the driver's side, and she's covered in blood.
And the search for the killers leads police to focus on the twisted romance of Tanya Bogdanovich and Michael McGregor.
There was a lot of harm being done to each other, to the point where it no longer was role play, it was scary.
For months, Tanya Bogdanovich and Michael McGregor had been exploring their darkest desires.
They both were interested in pushing their boundaries, seeing how far they could go.
But their pursuit of pleasure had been overshadowed by the shocking murder of local schoolteacher Noelle Paquette.
She'd been stabbed almost 50 times. So this was a very frenzied, violent attack.
Had Noelle simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or was it something more personal?
She was at a party, was on her way home. How is it that she ends up murdered? That became the real focus of the investigation.
The only evidence found at the scene were footprints leading to Noelle's body. At first, police assumed the footprints had been left by two people, Noelle and her killer. But upon closer inspection, investigators realized there were not just two sets of footprints, there were three.
One set is Noelle, so that means they're not only looking for one killer, they're looking for two.
With little else to go on, police knew that finding Noelle's assailants would be a daunting task. Until detectives got the break they were looking for, when two highway patrolmen told them about a bizarre encounter they had on the same road and near the same spot where Noelle's body had been found. Around 4 a.m. on New Year's Day, the two officers had been patrolling the country roads when they came across a stranded vehicle.
They see a car. It's on the side of the road, but its lights are on. So their initial reaction is somebody's in distress. Let's go see if we can help.
But before officers had even gotten out of their cruiser, they were met with a surprising sight. A female exiting the driver's side and covered in blood.
And she's hysterical, she's crying.
The woman identified herself as Tanya Bogdanovich and explained that her lover Michael had been accidentally injured while the two were having sex by the side of the road.
They'd apparently driven out to the middle of nowhere to fulfill some kind of wild fantasy.
She said that they were into BDSM and that they liked knife play, and they'd gotten a little carried away, and he'd reached out for the knife and cut himself badly.
Tanya told the officers that she tried to take Michael to the hospital, but when they got back to their car, she discovered that she'd left the lights on.
She went to turn over the vehicle to try to go to get him help, and the vehicle was dead.
The officers radioed for an ambulance, and with no evidence of a crime taking place, they let Tanya and Michael leave without any charges.
The police are left with the impression that this is a consensual sexual act and that there's no kind of criminal activity.
But now, with Noelle Paquette's savage body discovered 1 day later, and close to the exact same location, detectives couldn't help but wonder if the couple had been covering something up after all.
Yeah, this car with two people in it, one of them suffering some stab injuries and at least one knife in the vehicle, right around the same time frame as Ms. Paquette's disappearance. One would have to think there's highly likely a connection.
Investigators ran background checks on the two lovers, and while Michael's didn't turn up anything out of the ordinary, Tanya's revealed that she hadn't always been the upstanding nurse and mother she pretended to be. Apparently, before she went to nursing school or met Michael online, Tanya told several of her close friends that she'd been indulging her kinky sexual desires working as a prostitute. Though Tanya had never been arrested, her friends told police that Tanya had admitted she sold her body for money and to satisfy her own sexual addictions. Detectives, though, knew that simply because Tanya used to be a prostitute didn't mean she was a killer. Police still needed evidence, and a stroke of luck seemed to help them find a potentially crucial clue. Because Tanya and Michael had left the scene that evening in an ambulance, the car she'd been driving had been towed, and records indicated she still hadn't picked it up from the lot where it had been taken.
Police officers are sent to seize the vehicle so that the vehicle can't be moved or tampered with until they decide whether or not to seek a warrant.
No sooner had detectives identified Tanya's car than she and Michael suddenly showed up at the police station.
Tanya Bogdanovich and Michael McGregor showed up, wanting to pick up her car.
Police department staff informed Tanya and Michael that if they wanted her vehicle released, they would have to answer detectives' questions first. A requirement that obviously annoyed the couple, but both agreed to answer questions about Michael's accident.
Now, tell me, how is it that you and Michael get together? What are you up to? What's going on?
This is, it's so humiliating and embarrassing when you hear it out loud. So I'm holding the knife. He reaches out and grabs it. My instinct is like, pull back.
I just kind of like grabbed the blade and hooked both my hands and started bleeding like crazy.
You're pretty bandaged up.
Yeah, I'm going in for surgery tomorrow in London because I gotta get tendon and nerve repair.
On both hands?
Yeah.
When police called the hospital, they confirmed their story. Michael was scheduled for surgery the next morning. So far, Tanya and Michael's account of their sexual misadventure held up. But that didn't mean police were going to let two suspects slip through their fingers.
The police don't, at that point, feel that they have probable grounds to arrest them, so they keep them under surveillance.
To get an outside account of the couple's last 48 hours, police contacted friends and family. To their surprise, they discovered Tanya had a serious live-in boyfriend. And when police spoke with him, it became clear he didn't know Tanya was seeing anyone else.
Her boyfriend clearly has no idea what's going on and that she's having this kinky relationship with Michael.
He said that as far as he knew, Tanya had spent New Year's Eve with her best friend, a young woman named Maggie Geller. When detectives paid her a visit, Maggie told them she knew about Michael and was used to helping Tanya hide the affair from her boyfriend.
I think they were expecting me to be just as abrasive or just as secretive as Tanya and Mike. I was very transparent with them, and I just sort of told them exactly what I knew about Tanya and what had gone on since June and what I knew about Mike.
Maggie confirmed that Tanya had been swept up in the kinky affair with Michael that summer. And she could tell that the lovers' sexual adventures were helping Tanya work through her traumatic past. But over the past month, Maggie said the lovers had taken their experimentation to more extreme and dangerous places.
There was a lot of harm being done to each other, to the point where it no longer was role play, it was scary.
From what Maggie told investigators, it sounded like Tanya and Michael's story about consensual knife play was plausible. There was only one problem. Maggie told them that when Tanya called her from the hospital the next morning, she'd given a very different account of the accident.
She was obviously distraught. She said that they had gone to a kink party, so a BDSM party, and it went in the wrong direction, that someone came after her and Mike went to grab a knife and he ended up having to go to London Hospital for nerve damage in his hand.
At the time, Maggie didn't know the story Tanya and Michael told police. But even then, Maggie could sense that her friend wasn't telling her everything.
I didn't really put two and two together at that point, but I sort of had that gut feeling that not everything that she said was true.
But Maggie also confessed that Tanya had a good reason to lie to her. Upset by the increasing danger of Tanya and Michael's sexual activities, Maggie had threatened to reveal the affair to Tanya's long-term boyfriend.
I had told her that as soon as someone gets hurt, then that would be my breaking point.
So was Tanya lying to Maggie to protect her happy home and continue the affair? Or was the deception part of a web of lies meant to cover up a brutal murder?
You're telling various people about the party, but then you're telling police a completely different story. We don't know what the truth is now, but we know that they're covering something.
Coming up, shocking new eyewitness testimony blows the case wide open.
He sees what he believes to be a white male get into the rear of that vehicle.
And investigators suddenly find themselves in a race against time.
She said, "Take care of my family, and I love you, and you're the last person that I'm gonna call."
Tanya Bogdanovich and Michael McGregor shared passion for extreme sex. Their carnal obsession created an irresistible bond, which only intensified as they pushed their desires to increasingly darker and more dangerous places.
You have the relationship progressing to the point where they are both actively engaging in sexual fantasies of knife play, of rape, and things of that nature.
But the investigation into the stabbing of local schoolteacher Noelle Paquette had revealed the extent of the couple's violent obsessions and put them at the center of the murder investigation. So far, though, detectives hadn't been able to find any physical evidence connecting the couple to the crime, so they'd been forced to let Tanya and Michael go. But a day after their initial interviews with the couple, investigators caught a new break. A local man called police after seeing Noelle's picture on the news and said he'd seen the school teacher on the night she disappeared. It had been the early hours of New Year's Day, not long after Noelle had left her boyfriend and friends behind at the party they'd been attending. According to the witness, Noelle had been walking along a dark street alone.
There was a gentleman that was working that overnight shift at a factory, and he had come outside to have a cigarette break. And he makes observations of a young blonde woman who's walking up the street.
The man said he'd watched Noelle walk a few blocks. Then, a white sedan suddenly turned onto the same street and slowly pulled alongside Noelle. From the man's vantage point, it looked like Noelle had stopped to talk to the driver. And after a few moments, Noelle had gotten into the car.
He had thought that maybe there was just a friend who was picking up a friend.
But what happened next struck him as very peculiar.
He sees the vehicle make another stop, and he sees what he believes to be a white male get into the rear of that vehicle.
The witness confirmed that the pickup happened around 2:45 a.m., just before Noelle disappeared. Detectives returned to the closed-circuit camera footage in the area in hopes of spotting the car. As luck would have it, they found a perfect still image of the same vehicle the witness had described.
The information allowed them to get cameras around that area that showed a white Grand Prix.
And it just so happened that the vehicle in the surveillance footage was the same model and had the same license plate as Tanya Bogdanovich's Grand Prix that had been impounded by police. To detectives, it was now certain that Tanya Bogdanovich and Michael McGregor were responsible for Noelle Paquette's disappearance, and most likely her murder.
At that point, they felt they had reasonable probable grounds to make the arrest.
But investigators would have to move quickly. After speaking to the witness to Noelle's abduction, detectives received a phone call from Tanya's friend Maggie Geller, who told them that Tanya had just called her to let her know that the police were after her and Michael, and that they were ready to go on the run.
She told me they were trying to pin Noelle's death on her, and that she was gonna be leaving because it wasn't her that did it. And then she said to me, take care of my family, and I love you, and you're the last person that I'm gonna call.
But police knew that Tanya and Michael had to do one thing before they made good on their threat to flee the area. Michael's hand injury required surgery that was scheduled for that same morning. Detectives knew if they hurried, there was a good chance they could catch the couple before Michael was discharged and arrest them before they could disappear.
Michael was going to be kept for a while for observation, so they did have a chunk of time where they knew where they would be.
2 undercover police officers followed Tanya around as she waited for the operation to be finished. They even picked up her cigarette butts and immediately had her DNA.
Detectives patiently watched until Tanya received word that Michael was ready to be released, then followed her out to the parking lot as she retrieved her rental car.
They placed her under arrest for first-degree murder.
But when investigators went back inside the hospital to catch Michael coming out of surgery, they were in for a surprise. According to the front desk, Michael had already been checked out.
Nobody had thought to put an officer on him because he'd been in surgery. So he actually walked out the front door of the hospital and was picked up by his father.
It's not as if the police grabbed Tanya and then waited an hour. They went quite quickly to get him. They missed him by a matter of seconds. Now, at this point, he's left in a vehicle. He could be anywhere.
Investigators questioned Tanya to find out where Michael was going. But if she knew, she wasn't willing to say. That's when detectives caught an enormous break, when Tanya's cell phone suddenly started ringing.
It's Michael's father trying to find out where she went. That gives police Michael's location.
Tracking the call to a nearby hotel, investigators were finally able to take Michael into custody. When his father answered the door, he seemed stunned to learn that police were looking for his son. And he was much more horrified when he realized that Michael was being charged with first-degree murder.
As far as he knows, Michael is this mild-mannered college kid. He has no idea the things his son is into.
But what could have compelled Michael and Tanya to commit such a heinous and unspeakable crime to an innocent schoolteacher? Why had they targeted Noelle Paquette, a young woman with whom they had no connection? And what exactly had they done to Noelle after they lured her into Tanya's car? When police pressed the couple for information, they each refused to speak. But a search of their phone and computer records soon helped provide investigators with some possible answers to these questions.
There's a whole collection of evidence that's there. All their electronic gadgets had all sorts of items of relevant interest to the police.
The police were able to get into Tanya's account where there was incredible stuff, you know, all in order. Was the dark corner that had the worst rape fantasies.
The lovers had cataloged the escalation of their darkest desires. From the rape fantasy of their first date to their fascination with more violent activities.
There was an extraordinary amount of evidence. There were videos and photographs of the couple doing horrific violence to each other.
A number of public posts from late November showed the couple had even tried to recruit other women to take part in rape role-play scenarios.
They reached a point where violating each other and hurting each other wasn't enough. They needed to bring a third party into their relationship.
The lovers had been unable to find a willing partner. But by that point, Tanya and Michael's obsession and desire to inflict pain on the other person had grown to the point where they refused to be denied. So they agreed their next step would be to kidnap and assault a non-consenting victim.
There was a series of text messages going back and forth that set out their plan for the rape, abduction, and murder of various possible victims.
On Michael's 19th birthday, Tanya had presented him with a digital photo frame loaded with pictures from the social media pages of local girls who the couple identified as potential targets.
They eventually settled on a female student at Michael's college.
In their messages, the lovers set a date for the big event, New Year's Eve. But when they went to abduct their victim, she was nowhere to be found. That called for a change of plans. And the couple decided to go hunting for a random victim. The victim the couple just happened to have driven past that evening was Noelle Paquette. It had been cold that night, and Noelle, upset and alone after the fight with her boyfriend, gladly accepted the offer to drive her home from the woman she thought was a good Samaritan.
She was nothing more than a victim of circumstance. She really was a random person that they grabbed off the street.
Instead of a good Samaritan, Noelle Paquette had fallen victim to a pair of sadistic lovers. But would prosecutors finally learn what really happened to her that fateful night?
There was a lot of speculation on what exactly had happened, but nothing ever fully came out until the trial.
Coming up, terrifying details of the murder leave the jury in shock.
She'd been raped repeatedly.
But before their trial can conclude, Tanya and Michael make a shocking decision.
It was a sense of anger. It was a sense of defeat.
When 30-year-old Tanya Bogdanovich met 18-year-old Michael McGregor, she knew she'd finally found the man she could trust with her darkest desires. But the lovers' sadistic sex games had spiraled out of control. And now they were charged with the grisly slaying of local schoolteacher Noelle Paquette. Armed with a search warrant, investigators collected samples of blood from Tanya's Grand Prix and sent them to a crime lab for testing. Some of the blood came back as a match for the victim, Noelle Paquette.
They had the DNA. They were able to match that and that of the victims and put them in the same place at the same time. It was a strong case.
On the floor of the car, detectives also found the knife, which had traces of Noelle's blood on it, and the coroner's autopsy revealed even more horrifying details.
Most of her organs had been punctured. There was terrible damage around her throat, and she'd been raped repeatedly.
Combined with the couple's emails and text messages, prosecutors believe they could piece together the events leading up to Noelle Paquette's brutal murder. After tricking Noelle into getting in Tanya's car, the couple had driven her to the woods, where Tanya held the knife to Noelle's throat while Michael raped her. Then, after Noelle had been sexually assaulted, the couple began to stab her over and over. In the midst of the frenzy, Michael cut his own hand, but that didn't stop the couple's bloodlust. According to Michael and Tanya's text after the murder, it had been the most erotic experience they'd ever had.
There was no defense after the viewing of these text messages. It's a very, very difficult case to defend.
This was premeditation. They had a desire, they made a plan, and they put that plan into action.
As their trial approached, the lovers seemed to realize how heavily the deck was stacked against them. Just weeks before they were to stand trial, Tanya and Michael surprised everyone by making an announcement.
It was finally disclosed to the general public that both Tanya and Michael had decided to plead to first-degree murder.
In statements issued through their attorneys, both Tanya and Michael claimed that their confessions hadn't been attempts to gain leniency, but instead expressions of responsibility and even regret for the crimes they committed.
She was genuinely remorseful for what she did and wanted to take responsibility.
It was Michael's decision that he didn't want to put his family and Noelle's family and the community through this excruciating process of, 5-month trial.
For most observers, the couple's expression of remorse was hard to believe, especially given the severity of Noelle's murder.
I knew that she was guilty. There's that part of you that hopes it's not. So when the guilty pleas came out, it was a sense of relief. It was a sense of anger. It was a sense of defeat.
It's terrifying to think that there are people like Tanya and Michael out there who do terrible things, and that's a really scary thought to go to sleep with at night.
Kathy Stanek Cousins was a 27-year-old woman trapped in a loveless marriage.
She felt tied down. She just didn't want to be married anymore.
Until she took comfort in the arms of her handsome next-door neighbor, Tim Coyle.
She thought Tim could be the knight in shining armor.
Their mutual attraction quickly sparked an obsessive affair.
The relationship was very hot and sensual.
They were madly in love.
But the lovers' neighborhood fling would ultimately lead to tragedy.
The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head.
Now, go behind the scenes with detectives as they search for clues and expose the ugly truth behind a suburban sex scandal fueled by more than just passion.
This was all about money and greed.
I couldn't get my mind wrapped around it. I thought this stuff only happened in the movies.
Ninth, 2001. It was a peaceful spring morning in beautiful Palm Beach, Florida, when police received a frantic call from a local woman named Kathy Stanek Cousins, who told them her husband Sean was missing.
The report given by Mrs. Cousin was that she hadn't seen her husband in several days.
Kathy told them that Sean was a pilot for Jamaica Airlines and had been scheduled for a flight 2 days ago. But he never checked in.
He hadn't shown up for work, which is very unusual.
He misses a flight, and that's kind of a problem when you're a pilot.
Kathy explained that she and Sean had gotten into a fight the night before he was supposed to fly. So when he stormed out of the house, she assumed he was simply going to the airport.
According to her, he walked out. That was the last time she saw him.
She thought that, okay, he took off and he's going to go straight to Miami to make his flight.
However, Kathy told police that when she checked their closet, she found that he'd left his uniform and passport behind. Kathy said Sean had been suffering from depression, so when almost 48 hours passed without hearing from him, She was afraid something bad might have happened. A fear that grew when Kathy discovered something else that was missing.
When Sean left the house, he took the cash from his last paycheck and Kathy's .45 pistol.
Investigators wondered if Sean Cousins was planning to take his own life. Was it possible that he was still alive? And if he was, where was he? Kathy Stanek was born in Chicago, Illinois, to loving parents. Growing up, Kathy was an inquisitive child who craved adventure. And her first opportunity to travel would come when her family relocated to sunny Palm Beach, Florida. But the city's beaches and nightlife weren't enough for young Kathy. She wanted to see more of the world. And she finally got a chance to satisfy her wanderlust after high school, when she landed a job as a flight attendant for Jamaica Airlines.
Air Jamaica at the time was a huge and popular airline in South Florida. Pilots often, they were really well paid.
And it didn't take Kathy long to catch the eye of one of the airline's handsome young pilots, 29-year-old Sean Cousins.
Sean was this good-looking guy in a pilot's uniform, flying to Jamaica every week and making a lot of money doing it.
She was a beautiful woman. He was attracted to her intensely, and, their relationship started.
Kathy and Sean felt an instant connection that quickly led to romance. There was only one problem. Sean was a married man.
He told Kathy his marriage was basically over, but that it was a complicated situation.
He may have been in the process of divorce, but he wasn't just free. He had 5 children.
Although Kathy knew the adulterous affair was wrong, she'd already fallen in love with Sean and took him at his word that he was in the process of a divorce. As far as she was concerned, she'd met the man of her dreams and was willing to do anything to be with him.
This man seemed like a dream come true. He was a pilot. He probably talked about all his travels, and she felt she was going to have a life of adventure and excitement.
Kathy's persistence eventually paid off. After a few years of seeing each other in secret, Sean's divorce was finalized. He and Kathy were married days later.
Once Sean decided he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Kathy, he didn't waste any time getting started.
And the newlyweds began their new life together in style. Sean bought Kathy an expensive home in the gated community of Palm Beach Gardens. Sean's salary meant Kathy no longer had to work full-time as a flight attendant. Instead, she took a job at a flower shop, planning to travel with Sean whenever his schedule allowed.
There's some glamour in that life, and your spouse is going to great cities, but she wasn't going with him all the time, obviously.
But Kathy soon discovered that being a pilot's wife wasn't everything she'd hoped it would be.
The reality set in that she was alone a lot. He's traveling, she's by herself. It wasn't this romantic picture that she had at the beginning.
Kathy found herself spending most of her time alone and lonely. And whenever Sean did come home, it seemed all he wanted from Kathy was quick sex before he left again on another trip. All of the romance had completely drained out of their relationship.
Kathy was feeling neglected and by myself, and I'm lonely, and maybe she's feeling not pretty enough anymore.
Kathy began to resent the way Sean was treating her, but she wasn't quite ready to give up the life of privilege being a pilot's wife provided.
She felt trapped in a marriage where she couldn't get out of it. She wanted to go out and have a good time.
Kathy didn't know what she was going to do, but in the meantime, she was in desperate need of love, affection, and most of all, excitement. And she would find all 3 in the strong arms of her handsome next-door neighbor. Timothy Coyle was a 34-year-old cable company employee from Chicago, Illinois, who'd relocated to Palm Beach with his wife, Deborah, a few months before.
My mom moved 5 minutes away from us, and we just kind of had a nice little family and relationship going.
But that would all change when Sean and Kathy Cousins moved in across the street. The two young couples quickly discovered they had a lot in common.
They invited us over to have drinks by the pool, and they grilled, or they would come and, over to our house, just neighbors once in a while getting together.
But with Sean's frequent flights taking him away from home, Kathy spent more and more time alone with their new friends.
Kathy goes over there when Sean's away and gets to know Tim and his wife.
Kathy immediately liked Tim. He was handsome and funny, and he was incredibly charming. It wasn't long before Kathy realized she had a crush on her new neighbor, though she tried her best to ignore it. But Kathy was also bored and lonesome, feeling she couldn't help but share with Tim and Deborah one night over wine.
She proceeds to tell them just how lonely she is in that house all by herself.
Kathy confessed she felt scared to be left home alone, sometimes for days at a time, while Sean was on a trip. So being a good neighbor, Tim made Kathy a friendly offer.
Tim said, well, if you ever need anything, if something happens, you could always just, call us. We're right across the street.
But as the night wore on, Kathy noticed the way Tim was watching her, and she began to suspect there was more to his offer than just a neighborly gesture, even though Tim's wife didn't pick up on the signals.
I guess I was really naive because I didn't suspect anything was going on. I was so in denial. I didn't want to believe that was happening.
After that night, Kathy couldn't stop thinking about Tim. And a few days later, when his wife was running errands, Kathy took Tim up on his offer to keep her company. Once they were alone, neither could resist the temptation to give in to the passion they both felt for one another. But one stolen afternoon of lust wouldn't be enough. Kathy and Tim began having an impassioned affair. But the couple's bond wasn't just sexual. Kathy was becoming obsessed with Tim. Unlike Sean, Tim made Kathy feel both wanted and needed.
She had this neighbor flattering her, and she found that exciting. That was the appeal.
I mean, how sexy does that sound? That she has this great guy who's always there for her. He's not flying away like her husband.
Tim was just as consumed with Kathy, and living right next door, the lovers were able to continue their clandestine love affair, with his wife none the wiser.
They live across the street. He could go there and come home again, and his wife might not even realize where he's been.
However, keeping the affair a secret from Kathy's husband, Sean, was a different story. After getting the affection and excitement she'd been missing with Sean, Kathy couldn't bring herself to have sex with him anymore. And after Kathy turned him down a few times, Sean became suspicious.
At some point, he thought maybe she was having an affair. He got some signs, he got suspicious, and he was probably hoping that it was false.
So one morning, Sean decided to put his theory to the test. He lied to Kathy about his schedule and told her he was leaving on a flight. A couple of hours later, he returned home to find her in the arms of her lover, Tim Coyle.
He popped up unexpectedly, and there she was with the neighbor.
Coming up, investigators wonder whether finding out about his wife's affair had driven Sean to take desperate action.
They've got to be wondering if his talk about suicide wasn't just talk after all.
And as the search for the missing pilot continues, police make a disturbing discovery.
A body was found in an isolated part of Osceola County in a creek.
Kathy Stanek Cousins was a desperate housewife struggling with the lonely reality of being married to a pilot, until she found solace in the arms of her handsome and charming next-door neighbor, Tim Coyle.
The relationship was very hot and sensual. The sex is exciting.
But their secret affair had been overshadowed by the sudden disappearance of Kathy's husband, Sean. Sean had been scheduled for a flight, but he never checked in. And after 48 hours passed with no sign of Sean, Kathy had called the Palm Beach Police Department to file a missing persons report. Kathy explained that her marriage to Sean had been in trouble for months. His prolonged absences had caused them to grow apart, and whenever he came home, they'd wind up getting into a fight.
Their fights were usually about sex. He'd show up and want her to put out, and she expected intimacy.
I'm not a let's have sex with you kind of person. I'd rather much more make love. I was going to feel like a prostitute with my husband.
And Kathy said the problem in their marriage only got worse when Sean found out she'd been having an affair.
He popped up unexpectedly, and there she was with the neighbor. He saw enough to get furious.
Kathy told police she felt terrible about cheating on her husband and immediately ended the affair with Tim. She wanted to reconcile with Sean, and the two of them promised to work on their relationship.
He hands me a note. I realize what I've done to you, and I realize I've mistreated you. I realize I've been not there for you. I love you. I need you. I can't live without you.
But fixing their marriage was easier said than done. Sean's sexual demands continued to make Kathy feel used, and no matter how hard she tried to please him, he didn't trust her not to cheat on him again. Kathy said things had built up to another big fight the Friday before Sean disappeared.
If he doesn't get his gratification through the sex, then you better look out because the whole world's in trouble if he starts arguing, yelling, screaming, whatever.
Kathy said their fight continued the rest of the weekend until things finally came to a head on Monday night, and his mood swung suddenly from anger to depression.
And he starts bitching and moaning about how he can't live this way. I don't want him. He doesn't want to be alive.
Kathy told police that Sean stormed out of the house, and she didn't hear from him again until he called around 1:30 a.m.
Sean tells Kathy if she won't take care of him, he's going to find somebody who will.
Because I'm going to find a girl in the bar, and if not, I'll go pay a prostitute. I said, okay, and he hung up on me.
Kathy said she hadn't thought much of her husband's threats at the time. Sean had often said things just to upset her. But when she found out that Sean never showed up for his flight the next morning, she realized something was wrong. Kathy said she called Sean's ex-wife and family, hoping they'd heard from him. But they were just as worried as she was.
They had not heard from him, which was unusual. Even when he goes away on trips, he would touch base with them.
At this point, they're wondering if something happened to him.
And when Kathy discovered that Sean had taken one of their handguns with him, she was afraid he might be intending to take his own life.
When Sean left the house, he took Kathy's .45 pistol. They've got to be wondering if his talk about suicide wasn't just talk after all.
Palm Beach police put out a bolo alert for Sean Cousins. Sean's loved ones prayed he was just in a hotel somewhere recovering from his fight with Kathy. But a call from Osceola County Police would confirm their worst fears. On May 11th, a teenage boy was working on a highway road crew in rural Osceola County, Florida. Deciding to take a break, the teen broke off from the crew and walked down an embankment to a nearby creek, where he noticed something floating in the water. It was the body of a man.
He was face down in the water, arms extended out.
Horrified, the teen immediately called 911, and Osceola County sheriffs rushed to the scene. The body belonged to an unidentified middle-aged man, and from the state of decomposition, it appeared he had been floating in the creek for several days.
His shirt tail was neatly tucked in. Didn't seem like he was any kind of struggle. So we were thinking maybe one of the locals fell in the water, possibly drowned.
But it was soon clear that the victim's death had been anything but accidental.
The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head.
The body was so badly mangled that police believed at first that they would not be able to make a positive identification. But when investigators searched the man's clothes, they found a wallet containing a driver's license and credit cards.
The driver's license found on the body belonged to 34-year-old Sean Cousins.
When he run his driver's license, we find out he is a missing person out of Palm Beach County.
When the Osceola County sheriffs contacted Palm Beach detectives, they learned that Sean was last seen leaving his home 4 days earlier, on his way to Miami, an hour south of Palm Beach. And from the gunshot wound to his head, it appeared Sean may have followed through on his suicide threat after all.
Maybe he decides to drive out in the middle of nowhere and shoot himself.
Kathy was devastated by the news of her husband's death. But what neither she nor detectives could understand was why would Sean go all the way out to rural Osceola County to kill himself?
It's 100 miles away from where he said he was. He could have driven there, but where's his car?
With little else to go on, detectives hoped an autopsy might shed some more light on what happened to Sean. And in addition to the bullet wound found in Sean's head, the medical examiner discovered something that investigators on the scene hadn't noticed.
As the coroner is examining the body, she notices a second bullet wound in Sean's back.
Which meant Sean's death wasn't a suicide, it was murder. Coming up, investigators learned that Kathy and Sean's marriage was in more trouble than Kathy let on.
Numerous times the family would say that they would see Sean with scratch marks or bruises.
And the affair between Kathy and Tim might not have been over after all.
That further raises the police's suspicions that something is up here.
Months, Kathy Stanek Cousins and Tim Coyle had been cheating on their spouses in an obsessive neighborhood affair. But their secret romance had been overshadowed by tragedy. When Kathy's husband Sean was found shot to death in a rural creek 100 miles away.
The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head.
When Sean disappeared a few days earlier, he'd taken a handgun with him, and Kathy feared he may be intending to commit suicide. But an autopsy revealed cause of death had been no accident.
The autopsy showed that there were 2 bullet wounds, one in the head and one in the stomach. And that's obviously a tip-off that there was some type of a homicide.
With their missing persons case turning into a murder, the Palm Beach police investigation kicked into high gear. But who would want Sean Cousins dead? The victim's spouse is often the first person homicide detectives look into. And in this case, the revelation that Kathy had been having an affair with the next-door neighbor made them especially interested in speaking with her again. And when police matched the slugs from Sean's body to Kathy's missing .45 caliber handgun, she began to look like an even more likely suspect. But when detectives contacted Kathy, she insisted that she had nothing to do with his death. She said they were working hard to reconcile, and had even gone on a few dates days before he went missing.
While we were waiting for our table, we walked through the store, and they have all those like really cute little cards and stuff. I had picked them out. And I'm sorry for the way I've been. I'm sorry for the way I've treated you. I realized I've ruined the love you had for me. I love you.
The cards Kathy showed investigators confirmed her story. And when police spoke to Sean's mother, she agreed that her son seemed desperate to make the marriage work, against her own advice.
Sean did not want to get divorced, even though people told him, end this marriage, it's not good anymore. I guess he really loved her.
But if Kathy and Sean were both trying to save their marriage, then who else might have wanted him dead? Police didn't have very far to look, since Kathy's affair made her former lover Tim Coyle the next logical suspect. But when detectives went next door to talk to Tim, he denied having anything to do with Sean's death.
He seems more concerned about his wife finding out that he's sleeping with the neighbor.
He was still denying it, and that he was just trying to be her friend. She just lost a husband. He was just brutally killed, and I was supposed to be this, sympathetic neighbor.
However, Tim did have a theory as to what might have happened to Sean Cousins. He told police there were rumors that the Jamaican Airlines pilot had been using his international flights to smuggle drugs. Police investigated Sean's flight records looking for any indication of illegal activity. but were unable to come up with anything to suggest Sean had been the victim of a drug deal gone wrong. Hoping to find new leads, detectives went to Sean's first wife and family, and what they had to tell police was eye-opening. Apparently, before his death, Sean had confided in them that his marriage to Kathy was even rockier than she'd admitted to police.
There was very many incidents told to me by the family where there was altercations between Sean and Kathy.
And according to Sean's family, Sean had told them that Kathy was always the one who assaulted him.
When she would get upset, she would actually attack Sean. Numerous times the family would say that they would see Sean with scratch marks or bruises.
Sean's family told detectives that the biggest fight of all had taken place the day Sean had come home early to catch Kathy and Tim together.
Sean came home and found Tim in the house. He tells Tim to leave the house. Tim refuses because he says, "I'm here as a guest of Kathy, not of you." And then an altercation occurs between the two.
The two men had begun fighting, and that's when Kathy went and grabbed a gun from her bedroom and ordered Sean to leave her lover alone.
That only makes Sean angrier. There's a big standoff, and she tries to hold him off while she calls 911.
At some point, she hands the gun over to Tim to keep it on Sean while she's on the phone with the sheriff's office.
Sean was arrested for assault. Kathy quickly dropped the charges, but the damage had already been done. Sean's family told investigators that the incident had only made things between Sean and Kathy worse, and they were afraid that this time she might have finally gone through with her threat to kill him. Armed with this new information, police paid Kathy a visit, but she flatly denied the family's accusations and made it clear she had no interest in assisting in their investigation.
When we meet her, she's in the company of an attorney, and at that point, the attorney plainly told us that she would not be talking to us.
Although Kathy was completely within her rights, detectives were surprised by her sudden change in attitude. Now, instead of a grieving widow, she looked more like a woman with something to hide.
A wife who loved her husband should be willing to talk to the police till the end of time to get to the bottom of this.
Kathy may not have been willing to help with the investigation, but when police canvassed the neighborhood, they finally got the break they'd been looking for. A neighbor claimed she'd heard gunshots coming from the cousin's home on the night of the murder.
This alleged witness claimed that she heard gunshots in the middle of the night, which would have been the time that the alleged crime occurred.
The time of the gunshots matched the coroner's estimated time of death, which was enough for police to secure a warrant to search the cousin's home.
They thoroughly inspected the victim's home, and if there were 2 gunshots fired at close range, you would expect to find some evidence of that.
But they were unable to find any traces of violence. Investigators seemed to have hit a dead end. There was no physical evidence linking Kathy or Tim to Sean's death. But letters and emails recovered in the search of the cousin's home suggested that Kathy and Tim's affair might not have ended after all. They found numerous love letters and emails between the two, making it sound like Kathy was still very much in love with Tim.
She wanted to be with him and only him. She was tired of playing the happy little wife and wanted it resolved.
They were madly in love and were making plans to be together. So that further raises the police's suspicions. Wait a minute, something is up here.
The lovers' emails also contained links to websites that showed Tim Coyle thought of himself as much more than just a mild-mannered satellite installer.
We found a website where he painted himself as Major Tim Coley, and he was experienced in urban warfare.
He considered himself a mercenary, that he was out to do whatever needed to be done in order to get the mission done.
However, detectives found no record of Tim Coyle holding a rank in any of these armed services. It seemed Tim was little more than a daydreamer role-playing on the internet.
He wanted to portray himself that he was a badass, so to speak.
Just painting himself somebody he was not.
But was it possible that Tim had decided to make his mercenary fantasies a reality? Could he have killed Sean in an attempt to have Kathy all to himself? Coming up, new evidence suggests a possible motive for the murder.
The insurance policy went from $500,000 to $1 million.
Kathy's Danik Cousins and Tim Coyle were two neighbors in the throes of an impassioned, adulterous affair. But when Kathy's husband Sean was found murdered, she and Tim had graduated from cheating spouses to possible murder suspects. Of particular interest to police was Tim's secret internet persona, where he billed himself as a deadly soldier of fortune.
He considered himself a mercenary. He was out to do whatever needed to be done.
But did that include killing his lover's husband? To find out, police decided to take a closer look at Tim Coyle, and they learned some suspicious information when they spoke with his wife, Deborah. Apparently, just a few days after Sean Cousins' murder, Tim had called his wife in a panic.
He had taken my van, and he told me he was buying pool chemicals. And so he calls me up, freaking out that chlorine spilled and that he has to rip the carpeting out of my brand new van.
Tim told Deborah he was taking the van to a local dealership to have the carpets replaced. Deborah agreed. But when the repair technician opened the back of the van, they immediately noticed something strange.
Carpet is gone, which they say usually people that want to replace their carpet, they don't tear the carpet up, they let the people do it.
And in the floorboards, the dealership technician discovered something even more troubling.
They also found traces of what appeared to be bloodstains.
That just was not sitting well with the dealership, and they called the police.
Palm Beach police immediately dispatched a team of forensic specialists to take the van into evidence and conduct a thorough search. They collected samples of blood found on the floorboards of the van and sent them to the crime lab for testing.
They were able to determine that the blood in that automobile was in fact the blood of Sean Cousins.
For detectives, the blood evidence was a major step forward in the case against Tim Coyle.
It put Sean Cousins in that van, either hurt, bleeding, or somewhere where his blood was transferred to.
But while blood splatter proved that Sean had been inside of Tim's van, it wasn't enough to prove that Tim had committed the murder. Police needed more evidence before they could make an arrest, and they found it in Tim's cell phone records. With the help of Tim's service provider, detectives were able to track Tim's whereabouts on the day Sean Cousins had disappeared.
That cell phone acts like a GPS. That was giving us a timeline where he was at what particular time.
And the GPS map created by Tim's phone showed that on that day, Tim had driven from Sean and Kathy's house all the way to the exact creek where Sean Cousins' body had been found.
They could now actually prove that Tim Coyle drove the body after the murder from West Palm Beach to Osceola County and dumped it.
Detectives knew the cell phone evidence, combined with the traces of blood, was enough to put Tim Coyle behind bars. But before making any arrests, they wanted to determine how much Kathy knew and whether she was involved as well.
Has she just been covering for Tim, or was she a part of this?
Once again, Tim's cell phone records provided a clue investigators hoped would unravel the rest of the story.
A number was being called up north to Chicago, right around that time frame where we suspect maybe the homicide occurred.
The phone number belonged to a friend of Tim's back in Chicago, a fellow self-styled soldier of fortune named Daniel Bakovic. Like Tim, Daniel billed himself on the internet as a deadly mercenary for hire. And in addition to their phone calls, the two men had also exchanged a chain of suspicious emails in the weeks leading up to Sean Cousins' murder.
There was some communication to Daniel Bakovic. I have a mission that we have to do, just kind of like code for maybe what's really happening, and that's to cover up a homicide.
Detectives traveled to Chicago to find out what Daniel Bakovic had to say, and discovered he was more than willing to talk.
When we got there, he kind of said, hey, I figured someone would be finally contacting me about what's happening in Florida.
Daniel confirmed that Tim had tried to contract him to kill Sean Cousins. But Tim wasn't the one who was supposed to pay him. Kathy was.
Kathy's going to give him $500,000 after she cashes out her husband's $1 million life insurance policy.
It appeared the lovers had been just as motivated by greed as their obsessive love affair when they plotted to kill Sean Cousins.
$1 million is a lot of money, and that would be a motive for somebody to receive $1 million by killing someone.
Daniel told investigators that the plan was for him to ambush Sean while he and Kathy were at the movies.
Daniel Bakovic was supposed to kill Sean and made it look like a robbery.
But when it came time to fly to Florida, Daniel decided not to go through with it. He said he'd expected to receive an angry call from Tim, but didn't hear from him until more than 24 hours later, on the night of Sean Cousins' murder.
About 2:16 in the morning, Tim Quillak contacted him, and on the phone, and he's kind of excited. He says, I can't believe she did it. And I need you down here now. And he's like, what are you talking about? And then all of a sudden, he abruptly said, I'll call you back.
Tim never called back. But Daniel had assumed that the she Tim was referring to was Kathy Stanek Cousins. And she'd gotten tired of waiting for Daniel to show up and kill Sean.
That's what he interpreted, that it was Kathy who had killed Sean Cousins.
Between the evidence of the undying love affair between Kathy and Tim, the blood traces found in Tim's car, and the testimony of Daniel Bakovic, detectives had enough to arrest the lovers for the murder of Sean Cousins. But even behind bars, Kathy and Tim both continued to claim their innocence. And with no direct physical evidence tying Kathy to the crime, investigators knew their best shot at convictions was to get the lovers to turn on one another. They decided to try their luck with Tim first.
They had a stronger case against Tim. They had the blood in the van. They had some of his email correspondence to the mercenary up in Chicago.
Sensing he was poised to take the fall for the murder, Tim finally cracked and agreed to cut a deal with prosecutors.
We spoke to the prosecutor, and Mr. Coyle decided that it was in his best interest to perhaps take an offer from the state.
Tim agreed to plead guilty to a 10-year manslaughter charge in exchange for his testimony against Kathy Cousins.
With his plea deal in place, Tim confessed that he and Kathy had enlisted Daniel Bakovic's help in killing Sean. Their reason, to get Kathy's husband out of the picture so he and Kathy could finally be together.
We know now that was the motive. Her wanting to live the rest of her life with Tim. Sean's out of the way, and they've got $1 million policy.
But when Daniel didn't follow through with their plan, Kathy had gotten impatient, as Tim discovered after receiving an urgent text message later that night.
It's from Kathy, and it just says for him to come over quick.
Tim said he rushed over to Kathy's house and found her in the garage. She was standing over Sean with a gun.
Sean had been shot in the stomach and was bleeding.
Tim said Kathy tried to get him to finish the job. But despite Tim's claims of being a mercenary, he said he couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger.
She gave him the gun to finish it off, but he chickened out.
However, Kathy had no problem doing it herself.
Mrs. Cousins shot her husband in the head.
Tim told police that at first, he was horrified to witness Sean's murder. But he also realized that Kathy had done what they both agreed was necessary. She'd killed Sean to keep their love alive. And as his adrenaline kicked in, his shock quickly turned to lust.
Sean was dying or dead in the garage. They had wine, and then they had celebration sex, and this is the people that they were dealing with there.
Tim could have called the police, but instead, they both chose to be sexual together. It was like sealing their fate together. They were partners in this crime.
They were cementing and solidifying the fact that they could finally be together without any interruption. But it is the sickest way to do that.
And after the couple made love, Tim said they loaded Sean's body into Tim's van.
They drove until they found a desolate area where no one would hopefully find the body, and that's where they dumped it.
It was a shocking story, and fit with the circumstantial evidence the prosecutors had already assembled against the couple. But would Tim's testimony alone be enough to convict Kathy? Or would the lack of hard proof against the cheating widow lead to her acquittal? Coming up, as Kathy's murder trial gets underway, the state's case looks like it may crumble under scrutiny.
They didn't find any forensics. They didn't have the weapon. All they had was the wife having an affair.
Kathy Stanek Cousins fell in love with her handsome next-door neighbor, Tim Coyle. She thought she'd finally found the passion and excitement that had been missing from her life. But the clandestine affair had come to a shocking end when Tim confessed to helping Kathy kill her husband. And she found herself on the hook for murder. On May 19th, 2003, Kathy's murder trial began. Prosecutors argued she'd killed her husband for both love and greed.
She wanted $1 million of life insurance proceeds. She wanted to get rid of her husband, and she sought to accomplish both in one fell swoop.
Kathy's defense insisted that the state couldn't prove their charge of first-degree murder. They had no hard evidence to prove Tim's story that Kathy shot and killed her husband in their garage.
So it would have been some type of blood splatter, even a tiny amount. Forensics would have picked it up. So they didn't have that. They didn't have the weapon. All they had was the wife having an affair.
But the state believed that Tim's willingness to implicate himself in the murder proved he was telling the truth.
From the defense perspective, we will argue that their truth is whatever they need to find somebody guilty. I think in this case, they had to make an evaluation. Did his testimony, was it consistent with the physical evidence that they did have and the circumstantial evidence that they did have? And they ultimately made the call that it did.
Throughout the trial, Kathy appeared calm and confident until her lover was called to the stand.
I'm sure it was devastating for her. Tim sort of lives up to his own created persona. He treated this love affair as a mercenary would. You know, he put himself first and sold Kathy out.
The jury hung on every word as Tim Coyle described Sean's desperate final moments, as well as the lusty celebration that followed his murder.
His testimony just tied up the whole case and gave the jury an eyewitness account in very graphic terms.
It left little room for the jury to see Kathy as anything more than a cold-blooded killer who showed no remorse. But as the jury deliberated, Tim's plea bargain gave them cause for concern. He would only spend 10 years in prison, which left them reluctant to give his co-conspirator a more severe sentence.
The jury knows that he's going to get X amount, and they may feel, why should we give her that much more? So I believe that's what they took into consideration.
So instead of first-degree murder, they shocked everyone by finding Kathy guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter.
She got 15 years in prison.
It was a surprisingly light sentence for those who believed Kathy had executed her husband in cold blood. And while his killers had been brought to justice, Sean Cousins' family believed Kathy deserved a stronger punishment for committing the ultimate act of betrayal.
The family wanted to see Kathy go away for life for orchestrating such a heinous crime.
It's crossing a line. It's just letting your emotions take over and not worrying about the consequences in that moment.
In the end, Kathy's passion and greed destroyed more than just one life. it also destroyed the lives of everyone around her. A harsh reality that Tim's ex-wife, Deborah Coyle, has to face every day.
I loved him, but I was betrayed by him. You know, I remember the man that I thought I married, that I loved, and that wasn't him. If she never came into our lives, none of this obviously would have happened.